Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome to the Networking RX podcast. I am your host, Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Today I'm going to touch on a topic, and it's going to kind of continue on into next week. My brother-in-law, who works at the Ohio State University, and he does a lot of reporting for the university on research that's happening on campus, so he's kind of in tune with these sorts of things, and he knows what I do with respect to professional relationships and business networking. So he stumbled across an article that one of the co-authors happened to be a professor at the Ohio State University. At any rate, this was put into an article, but the title of the article is, and I'll put this in the show notes, a link to the article, How Socioeconomic Status Impacts the Way We Network. And I'm going to talk about the article quickly, and then it's going to kind of lead into next week, or not next week, but the next episode, I should say. Next episode I have on, I'm going to do an interview with J.V. Crum III. He is an attorney and got an MBA, but he became a self-made entrepreneur millionaire in his 20s. And since has gone on, he's the best-selling author, and he's a keynote speaker. He's a business coach, really a serial entrepreneur. And he has a Huffington Post column on conscious business. And he's the host of the number one ranked Conscious Millionaire podcast. And he's also the author of an international best-selling book, Conscious Millionaire, Grow Your Business by Making a Difference. So he works with a lot of millionaires and talks to a lot of millionaires, people who are aspiring to be millionaires. And I have a copy of his book, and he talks in his book about building powerful relationships. And so we're going to talk, again, in my next episode with J.V. Crum and talk about millionaires and relationships, but I do want to kind of bring this article back in because, according to the article, how our socioeconomic status will indicate how we utilize our networks. And they talk in the article, in talking about the article, and the article was written written in June of 2020, so it was written really in the height of the COVID situation. And the article opens up by saying, with COVID-19, it places us all in the same storm, but we're in different boats. And in kind of elaborating on that analogy or that metaphor, what they're basically saying is that we're all susceptible to COVID-19. Everybody on the planet. It's just one of those things. Hurricanes happening down in Miami, Florida. I might be in Columbus, Ohio, saying, "Geez, I feel sorry for those people. I hope they're all okay." Here, it's everybody. But we all kind of come at it differently because we all come at it with different physical situations. Some of us are in better health than others. Some have underlying issues. We all certainly come at it differently economically and psychologically. We come at it differently as well. And so that's where they kind of get this, the statement, same storm but different boats. But what their research focused on was really our networks and how we deal with our networks and how different socioeconomic categories or levels will network. And it talks in the article that they've been studying this for years. And the reason I say that is this is not somebody who just rolled out of bed one day and said, "Hey, listen, this would be a neat thing to write on," and going ahead and writing on it with very little evidence. There were three researchers coming from very certainly well-known institutions. You have somebody from Northwestern, a couple people from Northwestern, and a woman from the Ohio State University. Those are all big research universities, and so these people know their stuff. They've focused on a topic and they really go in deep on it. So they looked at this and they talked about it, and they actually provided a couple case studies, or not case studies, but just used a couple examples, probably real life, but certainly examples. And they talked about a woman by the name of Brianna Davis, who is a Arizona State graduate student. and she's a content creator at a marketing technology company. And she was laid off. And what she did when she was laid off was she immediately informed her LinkedIn network. Got online, said, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. Been laid off." I don't know what the post said, but you kind of reached out to her LinkedIn community, and that's a really broad community. Even for people who don't use it like a lot of people use it, it becomes a very broad community. And so she really went wide with this. She really went wide with her troubles. And then they contrast that with a woman who was a cook in Cleveland, and the restaurant where she worked was shut down due to the pandemic. And the response to her job loss was to turn to her inner circles. Managers, she's described it as her second family, who allowed her to stock up on perishable food. I'm reading from the article from the restaurant and help her file for unemployment. She also reached out to friends who offered financial support, an understanding landlord. So she kind of went narrow. She didn't widen. She, as they term in the article, she winnowed. She went narrow. And so obviously just two people, and two people do not make a study, but they have a lot of other research. And what they found is that generally speaking, people who are in lower socioeconomic status, in lower economic status or classes, they tend to winnow. They reach out to more constrained networks, whereas higher status people tend to widen. They report larger. They'll report on social media. People that might reach out to people that they don't know, and that a lot of that happens on networking. I see a lot of people who are out there and they're in transition, and presumably higher socioeconomic, their professional jobs, professional careers, and they're reaching out to people they hardly know, who are connecting them to total strangers, who are connecting them to three other total strangers, and it goes on and on and on. And so the real question is, well, why is this? Why is this? And I certainly have my own questions. I'm not a researcher, and I don't have their research study in front of me. But they ask the question: why are higher socioeconomic status people more likely to widen under threat? And what they found is that in their research is that people who feel in control of their environments, such as people with status. I mean, if you're somebody who feels that, okay, I've got a house and, I've got money in the bank, and so I can kind of relax to a certain extent, they can confidently reach outside of their social comfort zones to people. They're not worried about being rejected. I might be rejected, but so what? I'll just move on to the next person. Contrast that with somebody in a lower socioeconomic status. They may not feel as comfortable reaching out to people beyond their family, beyond the people that they treat as a second family. In the one case of the cook, the people who were the managers in the place of business where she worked. What they mentioned in the article is that research revealed that people with lower socioeconomic status struggle to leverage help from their higher status contacts, mainly because they felt that the higher status contacts wouldn't go to bat for them, so to speak, wouldn't refer them on, kind of made a value judgment. Okay, maybe not so much what's in it for me, but do I really want to recommend this person? And that certainly gets there. There's a whole can of worms there I don't want to get into. The bigger question I have that I want to run by JV is what this article says, and what the research says is that when people of higher income or higher socioeconomic status run into trouble, they will reach out to a broader network. And the research shows that somebody in a lower socioeconomic status, when they run into trouble, they're going to really kind of reach narrow, reach just a close family, close friends. And so I guess the question I have that I'll run by JV is this a situation where people get to that socioeconomic status because they're going wide? In other words, the people who are in that higher socioeconomic category, they go wide when they're threatened because they've just always gone wide. They had a wide network leading into it, and so when things started to happen, they were more comfortable with it. Whereas somebody who had the more narrow network, the winnowed network, when something happened, it's not that changed how they networked. They just continued on doing what they're doing, and that's really kind of the question I have with respect to it. And I don't know that there's an easy answer to it. You could certainly delve into politics. You could certainly delve into a whole lot of stuff there, and I'm not prepared to get into any of that. Other than just pointing out that there are people network in different ways, and a lot of it's dependent upon where you fit socioeconomically. And to me, it makes sense. I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong, but if you're somebody who is reasonably accomplished, you might be embarrassed reaching out to somebody who's lower on the socioeconomic scale, but you have the confidence to do so. Whereas somebody who's on the lower end, they might feel uncomfortable reaching out to somebody on the higher end, and maybe the people on the higher end aren't willing to go to bat for them, aren't willing to help them. Whereas if you're on the higher end and you're reaching out to somebody, if you're a 9 on a scale of 1 to 10, you're comfortable reaching out to a 6 or a 7 and pretty confident that 6 or a 7 is going to be willing to help you. Whereas if you're that 6 or a 7 or the 3 or 4, you're not going to reach out to the 6 or 7 because, one, you might not have connection with them anyways. But even if you do, you might not get the assistance that they would give to the 9 or the 10. And the 6 or the 7 might be saying, oh, you know what, I'm going to help the 9 or the 10 because they're going to get back on their feet and then they'll remember me. Whereas they might look at the 3 or the 4 and say, you know what, I don't know if it's worth my effort. And again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just trying to kind of understand what's going on here. When I talk about professional networking, when I talk about how people build relationships, I've never really thought about this issue. I've kind of looked at it as everybody is kind of being in the same boat. We're on the same storm, we're in the same boat, and that's clearly not the case. And this article has really kind of opened my eyes to it. And again, so later this week, next episode, I'm going to talk with J.V. Crum, and we're going to kind of touch on this. And he is somebody who's got years and years of experience talking to other millionaires, and just and talking to them about their relationships and how they've built themselves, and see what he has to say on it. I think that'll be interesting, but then that's just me. It's my podcast. But before we wrap up, remember, being networked is vital. Being networked is absolutely vital, and certainly if you're responsible for driving sales in your business or profession, you know and I know that referrals are the most effective means of generating revenues, and it's always been that way. Referrals are just the best way to get business. If you're looking for an easy way to drive referrals, they're out there. Join a chamber. There's lots of chambers around this country, or better yet, you can join a networking group like AmSpirit Business Connections, and we're quickly expanding across the country. But having said that, think about this. If you had the choice, would you rather be a renter or the landlord? And I know it's almost rhetorical. It's a no-brainer, right? If you're smart, you want to own the building. You want to be the person collecting the rents. So why do you want to just pay to be in a networking organization when you could make money owning a networking organization? At AmSpirit, as I said, we're looking to expand. We are expanding, and we're looking for highly engaged entrepreneurs and professionals who want to operate a networking organization. They more or less they want to own the building. They just don't want to pay rent and be in another organization. If you're interested, and I'm sure many of you are, I invite you to reach out to me. We have an email. I have an email at the end of this program or one in the show notes. We're in the process of this national expansion, and we're looking for organizers and managers throughout the country to help us. So if you want to make more money from professional connections and also make money building professional connections, give me a holler.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.